Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us. Roster building season in full swing. Let's take a look at some of the comings and goings for the Browns during free agency. Of course, they acquired Jerry Jeudy in a trade for a 5th and a 6th round draft choice from the Broncos. They signed linebacker Jordan Hicks, 2 years, $8 million. Nyheim Hines, a running back who was injured, missed all of last year with an off-the-field injury, tore his ACL and his LCL in a jet ski accident. 1 year, $3.5 million. They signed backup quarterback Jameis Winston, 1 year deal up to $8.7 million. They also signed a young offensive tackle, Hakeem Adeniji, was on the practice squad of the Vikings. He is 6'4", 315 pounds. Players that are returning to the Browns, and the top one there, a big one. They get Zadarius Smith back, 2 years, $23.5 million. Could get up to $25 million with incentives. Maurice Hurst agrees to a 1 year, $3.2 million deal. Shelby Harris coming back, 2 years, $9 million total. Michael Dunn, the backup guard, also agreeing to terms and will be returning to the Browns. Now, players that are leaving via free agency, Browns losing a couple of linebackers. Anthony Walker signs with the Dolphins. Sione Takitaki signs with the New England Patriots. Special teamer and pretty good, a really good special teamer, decent cornerback, Mike Ford signing with the Texans, and Jordan Elliott has agreed to a 2 year, $10 million deal with the San Francisco 49ers. So with most of free agency in the books, we'll take a look ahead at some of the guys that the Browns might be interested in the upcoming draft. A little later in the show, Lance Reisland will have film breakdown video analysis of guys on the offensive side of the ball, some running backs and some wide receivers. Here are the list of some of the guys that we know the Browns are interested in. Some of them they've even met with at the Combine. Start with a big defensive lineman from LSU, Mason Smith. Take a look. These are listed as the strengths for Smith. 5-star signee coming out of high school, plus traits, untapped potential. He's a tall guy. He can use long leverage, strike leverage, blockers off balance, upper body power to extend and set edge in position, effective club move, turn himself with blockers. Quick first 2 steps on pass rush downs, hits blockers with a stutter step, and effective arm over to beat productions. Now, some of the weaknesses, some of the things he's got to work on: missed extensive time, shoulder surgery a couple years ago, ACL tear, so banged up, coming off of those, looked healthy at the Combine. Leggy plays with a very narrow base at the point, too easily displaced when blockers get into him, bounced off balance when pad level gets too tall as a rusher, and he isn't going to reset the pocket with a heavy bull rush. But he is quick, and he can get into the backfield. Smith admitted that the Browns have talked to him, told us how that meeting went as well.
He really just was telling me that they're very much an attack defense, and I like that, like I said earlier. And I actually think my meeting was really good with them. You know, I was able to draw up some things on the board, and I think they really liked me and what I bring to the game.
What would it be like to play alongside a pass rusher like Myles Garrett, and how much have you watched him?
I've definitely watched him a lot. You know, he's a very proficient guy, and he's a great. He's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. So like everything that you could take from him, you know, I would love to get there and pick his brain and just be able to, you know, get on under his hip and just be able to learn from him.
Again, Mason Smith talking about potentially playing with Myles Garrett in the meeting he had with the Browns. All right, another guy that was a star of the Combine, Braden Fisk. Here's a look at the scouting report on Fisk. Plays with a fully fueled motor. Both his run defender, pass rusher, leaps out of his stance and attacks the pocket upfield. Speedy short strides, allow edge-to-edge rush, twist game potential, creates decent point of attack pop with hip explosion, punches, and plays around blockers. And also activity level creates challenges for heavy static defenders. Weaknesses, he's a bigger lineman, can kind of stick to him, gets overtaken by hand resets, solid play strength, but gets pushed around by double teams, needs favorable edge rushing protection, or ends up on the end of a punch. Fisk, another guy that's also met with the Browns and kind of talked about what he is like and what a team is getting with him as a player.
One, just the maturity that I bring, and two, just how I treat the game. I mean, I treat the game like a pro. You can ask anybody I'm around in my buildings that I've been in that, this is ball is what I do. I mean, I'm all about it. And, I treat it like a pro, and I mean, that's how it's going to be when I get to the next level. There's not going to be any questions of can I handle the pressure of the next level. There's not going to be any questions of, can I handle the long days, the film, everything, that goes into it. I mean, this is, something I've been doing for a long time, and I've been able to handle it up to this point. I think I'm ready to play at a high level and just continue the success.
What teams can you recall you've talked to?
Just this week with formal interviews, I mean, I spoke with the Colts, the Bills, Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Baltimore. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but it's been a great week. I mean, a lot of teams reached out. I spoke to pretty much all 32 at the Senior Bowl, so everyone's gotten a chance to meet with me. It's been awesome so far.
And Fisk might have played his way out of the Browns draft slot. He was the most athletic defensive lineman in that group. Had some skills with his footwork and agility, made him look a little bit like a linebacker. Rookie Ahorohoro is another guy that the Browns kind of interested in. Muscular build, good lean mass, impressive athleticism, explodes into the neutral zone, attacking blockers with first hands, makes a living under his opponent's pad, sets a firm edge, unified hands, feet slide, quickly past lateral block attempts. Field demeanor can turn cranky from time to time. Tools and potential are present for him to become a better pass rusher as a pro. Quick closeouts on quarterbacks once he finds the pocket as well. Lateral quickness, elevated twist success in pro. Sounds like a guy that likes to get upfield. Here's his weaknesses. Gets pads turned and sealed due to his technique. Needs better mass to anchor and fight off double teams. Gets too caught up in battling single blocker rather than discarding and making a play. Average instincts as a playmaker inside. Rush based on quickness and activity more than skill, and has not learned to convert speed to power just yet. Ahorohoro on his skill set and what our teams are getting with him.
On the first day I came here, I had like 15, 16 of them. And so it was so many teams I can name. The Chargers, the Cowboys, the Bucks, the Steelers, Browns. Yeah, I met with the Browns too. I met with pretty much all the teams, yeah. Off the field, that's all I do is just watch football. Like literally, I'm just finding ways to get better. Anything that has to do with football, I'm doing it. Playing Madden, just to learn coverages and little things like that. I'm on the board. You see me on the board at home, stuff like that. Just because I always feel like there's ways to get better. I look at myself as a sponge, and I just want to learn and soak up as much knowledge as I can.
Another guy that has been tied to the Browns in several mock drafts, defensive lineman from Michigan, Chris Jenkins, does have the NFL bloodlines. His father, Chris, four-time Pro Bowler as a defensive tackle. You know, Andrew Berry likes the bloodlines. Excelled in playoff matchups against lines from Alabama and Washington. Consistently first in with hands. Playing the blocks before blocks play him, hustles and quickness to close out running lanes and two gaps away. Holds ground against single blocks, can tackle what is in his gap, relentless pass rush energy, utilizes active hands and feet to find openings, possesses legitimate spin counter to bolster his pass rush plan as a pro. Now weaknesses, things he's got to work on. Missing the ideal frame and girth for a NFL starter inside, so the interior. Not nearly enough anchor to withstand pro double teams regularly. Inconsistent contact balance through lateral block engagements. Average hand pop to knock pass blocker off his base, and will struggle to create adequate pocket passer as a bull rush. Jenkins did talk about what an NFL team is getting in him.
Oh, because I'm a disciplined player. I'm gonna get you whatever you need. You know, you tell me to do something, you can. If you need me to be an impact player, I'm gonna do everything in my power to do that. If you need me to be a gritty trench player, do the dirty work. I'm gonna do whatever I can to, do that. I'm gonna give you whatever you need out of me. And, I'm humble. I've learned to be humble. I've learned to be where my feet are. So, I'm gonna impact and help the team in any way that I can.
Chris Jenkins, again, talking about what he would bring to an NFL team and why an NFL team should draft him. All right, another guy with NFL bloodlines, Jeremiah Trotter, linebacker from Clemson. Strengths, outstanding football IQ, plays with anticipation to mirror play development. Talented in slipping blocks, no wasted motion. Attacks blocks with force to spill runners wide or set an edge outside. Excellent body control, change of direction, maintains tackle potential. Comes to balance, wraps up runner with ideal target points. rare, elusive, and footwork creates high-end success as a blitzer. Things that Trotter needs to work on. Lacking length can be engulfed by blockers if he's too static. Chance taking while running the alley can work against him. Tape showed inconsistency with finding run fits against Notre Dame. In particular, lost track of coverage duties in zone, can be fooled by eye candy on play action. Take a look at what an AFC executive says, though. Really smart, always under control, gets guys lined up, real quick to read and react. If he were a little bigger, I could see him going in the first round. That's from an AFC executive. Jeremiah Trotter talked about what he does well as a linebacker.
I feel like, my instincts when blitzing, that's a key part of blitzing as a linebacker especially. Being able to, tell and read if I'm one-on-one with a running back, if he's leaning too much, if he's sitting light, really tells me, gives me good insight on what kind of move I want to do on the back to be able to get that one-on-one and win.
Again, Jeremiah Trotter, a linebacker, with the Browns losing both Sione Takitaki as well as their other starting linebacker. They may be looking for a linebacker in the draft. We'll see how that plays out coming up. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland will join us. Film breakdown, video analysis of some of the wide receivers the Browns might be looking at in the upcoming draft. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
All right, everybody, let's take 5. With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery.
Like the $5 25X. It's a nice way to nab up to 150 grand.
The Lady Luck family of scratch-offs is the Ohio Lottery's first ever, with 5 price points from $1 to 20. They're an easy way to break into some fun.
So we're going to look ahead to the NFL draft. We'll take a look at some position groups, film breakdown, video analysis. Whenever you do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, let's turn our attention to some wide receivers, and we're going to look at guys that the Browns would be able to potentially select. So no first-round draft choices when we look at these wide receivers. First guy to take a look at is a guy from Texas, Xavier Worthy. What do you think some of the things that the Browns like about him that would make him appealing to this offense?
Well, I think it's a really good draft for the Browns because they need some guys who can get some easy yards, do some things for them in space. We have talked about that for eons in the last couple of years about guys who can get them easy yards. And the good thing about this draft, it is a deep draft at receiver. So you got Harrison, Dunze, Nate, those guys up top, but there's some guys that are real close to that. And Xavier Worthy's a guy that I really like. He's a guy that he's a 4.29 guy, so he might be the fastest guy in the draft. He had 78 receptions for 1,000 yards last year. He's had a really good, solid career every year. But what he does is he separates. And the thing I like about him is his ability. He can run the full route tree from inside and out. He can be a punt returner. He can take those easy run-pass options, those hitches, those slants, and he can take those to the house. And those are the clips we have. So if you take a look at, the clips that we're going to see on Xavier Worthy, you see the first one right here. It's just the vertical, and you're going to get a couple different looks at it. And what he does, he has great spatial awareness. He has great body control. And like I said, his ability to run by people. So you can see a great throw here against Alabama. He adjusts his body and makes a great throw. And then it takes him right into what I think the Browns really need. The Browns have really struggled in their return game. And again, they got to be able to shorten the field so they don't have to go perfect. And you're going to see what he does here in the punt return game, which is another thing I think he can help the Browns is in their return game, especially their punt return game, and get some more yards. And then last, what I like about him, if you look at the last clip, we're going to see what he does in space. So this is just run pass option. Ewers is going to take this because he likes to look, and this is just a stop or a now. A lot of different calls from him, but it's basically saying we're going to run past a guy. He does all of these things really well. The one concern you would have is that he's 175 pounds, and I have never taken into account size in terms of weight, but after being down on the sidelines last couple years at camp, these guys are so big and fast. You worry about a guy taking hits and being available for 17 games, and that would be my only concern. He can run all the routes. He comes from a great pass offense. They do great things at Texas. I just think his size would be the only concern. In fact, I think his size is why he's not a first-round guy.
Yeah, he goes 6'1", 172 is what he's listed at. It's intriguing, though. If you can get deep on Alabama, there's something and the other thing is, unlike Schwartz, who the Browns drafted, this guy is a football player first. He's played significant football as opposed to Anthony Schwartz, so that's interesting as well. All right, next guy we're going to look at, a little bit bigger guy, Xavier Legette from South Carolina. What do you like about him?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off there. Well, what I like about him is that he's productive. So he only had a big senior year, but he kind of got into his groove and what he wanted to do. And so they kind of moved him all around. He is a physical freak. He's a 4.3 guy. He had 71 receptions for 1,275 yards last year. Average 17 per. What I like about him is his ability to do different things, but he's big. And when you're big, you have the ability to be a vertical threat with that speed. He's a 4.3 guy. Size and strength. He's fantastic with contested catches. But he's a guy, again, who he's a vertical threat. And this draft is so deep in receiver that this is another guy who has first-round talent, in my opinion. He's so physically big and gifted, but I think what he can do, he can give you some of that, like the Corley guy I'll talk about here in a second. He can give you some of that Elijah Moore stuff people want, but he's big enough to do it, and he can run the ball a little bit. He can run these jet sweeps and things like that. And you're going to kind of see, as you get to these clips, what he does. And the first clip you're going to see is just a crossing route everybody in America runs. And you'll see his ability to catch this ball and run away from, SEC guys. And when you run away from SEC guys, you're fast. And you're going to constantly see this. Next, you're going to see here, you're going to see a contested catch in the red zone. This is something else that I think the Browns can, add to Cooper, add to Njoku, is his ability to use that big body, extend out, and make really, really good catches. And again, his ability to run away is very good. His contested catches is very good. I guess, in people question his route tree ability, and he does not run a lot of routes, but I don't think the Browns need that. They need a guy who can touch the ball and make plays. And this is what this guy do. He's not a refined route runner yet, but he's athletic enough to do it, and I think he'll get there. They need guys that can get him easy yards, and this is what he can do. 6'1",
223, so a little bit bigger than Worthy. All right, next guy, and you mentioned him, Malachi Corley. He goes 5'10", 215. Western Kentucky is where he's from. What do you like about him? How does he fit into what the Browns are looking for?
Well, I absolutely love this kid. I think he's dynamic in space, and his ability to get the ball in space and make easy yards. And I say that all the time, but it's really a true factor. It's not always the home run hit this guy can do. It's the ability to get to second and 4, second and 3. But this is, I think, the best run after catch guy. This is a Deebo Samuel type guy. He's got Elijah Moore skills at 215 pounds. He's a weight room guy. He's a 4.340 guy. He's a 355 bench guy. He's multi-sport kid and athlete. In high school, he played multiple sports. He played defense in high school as well. I love the fact that he's tough. I love the fact that he has great contact balance and his ability to take a hit and keep going. And you're going to see in these clips kind of what I think the Browns need to that. So the first one you're going to see is just, again, a mesh concept, his ability, and you're going to see him take a hit here right on the thigh and keep his balance, and then he breaks the tackle. And this is what he consistently does against everybody he plays. So again, you're going to see a tunnel screen here, his ability to take these easy throws, these easy reads, and get big yards. And again, he's a guy who has Elijah Moore skills, so he can run the bubbles, the quick screens, but he's big. He's 215 pounds, like I said. His ability to break tackles and have great balance is a guy that the Browns need. I would not be shocked if this guy is the guy they take because of what he brings to the table. Dynamic guy with the ball in his hands, and I think he'd be a great fit for what the Browns need.
Yeah, the build, you can see it's similar to Elijah, or not Elijah Moore, Deebo Samuel, just a big-bodied guy. Are you at all concerned, Western Kentucky is in the Sun Belt? Is that a concern, or is that something that the Senior Bowl kind of alleviates somewhat?
You brought it up, Senior Bowl. He's dominant at the Senior Bowl, and he was dominant with his ability to release off the line of scrimmage, which I think a lot of people had. Because he doesn't run an elite route tree, a lot of guys worry about releases. He was absolutely sudden, twitchy, uncoverable at the Senior Bowl against the best guys, and that tells you that he's going to be good against anybody he plays. And he's a touch guy. again, kind of like Leggett. He's not a guy who's super polished yet, but he is polished when it comes to getting yards, and that's what the Browns need.
All right, another guy that figures to kind of light up things athletically, Roman Wilson, 5'10", 186 pounds from Michigan. Ohio State fans will be familiar with this name.
Well, you know what I like about Roman Wilson is it's an underrated thing. But first of all, he comes out of a huddle in Michigan. So when you come out of a huddle, you learn multiple positions. So many of these kids coming out of college now, they play on the right or left side or the motion guy. They don't take plays out of a huddle. They don't have to listen to this long verbiage that he's now going to get in the NFL. He got that at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. He also understands the full route tree against full coverages, something else a lot of guys don't do. So he can run routes from inside and out. He's highly athletic. Now, his numbers don't scream at you because he only had 41 receptions last year. But he made big catches in big times, and he's really good in the red zone. So I think he's a guy who's polished, and he's a guy who's reliable. And some guys are just better than their measurables. And Roman Wilson is one of those guys. He's extremely explosive, and people don't think he is. But I think he's a guy in the draft and through this process with the combine, the pro day, that's going to scream up charts because of his ability, his physical abilities that go along with his football making skills. And you're going to see some of those skills here in his clips here. So first clip you're going to see is he runs a smash route, and he does a great job of bending inside the safety. Next, this is what I really like, because this is what you're going to get out of Deshaun Watson. Scramble Hill by McCarthy. He's going to go up and make a football play and just grab it over top of the defender. Again, going back to his smash route, you're going to see at the top of this screen, he bends it out because the number 4 is underneath him, and which tells you he has a great understanding of what routes are. And in the NFL, you have to run different routes against different coverages, even when the same play is called. And that happens in college, not as much as it will in the NFL. And I think truly playing in this scheme, this pro scheme that he played at Michigan, is going to limit the learning curve for him, and he's going to be able to produce earlier than other guys because of his skill set. Very polished guy compared to the other guys. This guy is a very polished guy. Now, he's not a super run after catch guy, but he's a guy who you can rely on to be in the right spot. And with Deshaun Watson, that's what you need.
All right, the final guy that we'll look at, again, these are guys that the Browns could draft in second or later rounds. Luke McCaffrey, 6'1", 202 pounds from Rice. And it is the brother of Christian McCaffrey, son of Ed McCaffrey, a really good receiver back in the day with the Denver Broncos. What do you like about McCaffrey?
Well, he's got elite short area quickness. That I will tell you. He comes from a great pedigree, obviously. He's very, very, very talented. So he initially played quarterback in Nebraska and has some success as a quarterback. Then he goes to Rice, and he turns into a receiver, and he turns into a high-level receiver. Last year he had 71 receptions for just under 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. So he's very productive in the red zone. What I see out of him is a football player, and I see a guy like a Taysom Hill. He throws the ball well enough. And in the red zone, because the red zone's so important in the NFL, you can put him at quarterback and you can make him a +1 in the run game. He throws the ball well enough to get the ball to Njoku and Cooper and these guys who need the ball in space. Not that you want to do that, but it comes down to, I don't think you want to run Deshaun Watson anymore. You pay him a lot of money. You want him to throw the football, scramble, but not take unnecessary hits. If you need a play, this is a guy, a versatile guy. He's my sleeper. So he's a guy who will probably be available day 2 or 3, and I think he's got a ton of skill, which you'll see.
All right, so let's take a look at that first clip for McCaffrey and what you see here.
So this is just a vertical route, and you can see him just make a great adjustment, great spatial awareness, great ball control. He catches the ball with one hand, and you're going to see it from the other. I got another angle of it here. Just his ability to separate and go get the ball. He's got tremendous skills. This is what you like. This is him at quarterback, not catching the ball. So play goes back. You're going to see the play again. Him throwing his ability. Now you get the ability to run. So now he's in the red zone. Let's go back and look at these 3 clips again. So the first one just takes you through this vertical. Great spatial awareness, great ball skills. He's got great body control. He does a really good job of running away from people. I'll be interested to see what his 40 time is. Again, a guy who can shoot up. Then he's at quarterback at Nebraska. They run a little pin and pull like he's going to run. He pulls it and throws, a pass for a touchdown. Then they run a dart play or a bash play where he's going to keep the ball on a run game. So he just has so much versatility both in the run and pass and what he can give play in the slot, play quarterback, play outside, can do different things. He could be a gadget guy. Again, great late round value with McCaffrey, and obviously he comes from a great family.
Lance Reisland, we will continue to do this with some draft positions in the upcoming weeks. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, great stuff. There you get a look at some of the wide receiver names that you see attached to the Browns, some video of what they can do. We'll continue doing that with different draft positions as we lead up to the NFL draft. We're going to take a quick timeout. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. NFL Scouting Combine wrapped up. We continue to look ahead towards the draft-eligible players coming up in the NFL draft. Film analysis, video breakdown, whenever we do that. We welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Lance, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the running backs in area. You would think the Browns would be looking towards, these would be all guys that are available second round or later. Let's start with Blake Corum, a guy from Michigan that Ohio fans will recognize the name. What do you see with Blake Corum when you look at him on video and film?
Well, first of all, he's 5'8", 205, and he runs really compact. And when you think about, one of the first things I love about him is he comes from a hardball offense. And what I mean by that is he understands coming out of a huddle. He understands personnel groups, 13, 12, 10 personnel groups. He understands zone schemes, gap schemes. So there's a lot of things he understands. So that learning curve won't be that great. And then the other thing I like is that he ran pretty well. He ran a 4.53. His shuttle times were great. His shuttle time was 4.12. His three cone was 35.5. He had 27 reps for 225, which is number one with the backs. Great short area quickness. He has great jump cuts. He's a natural pass catcher, so he didn't run a lot of routes, but he can, and he'll only get better with that. He gets to top speed very quickly. So even though he's just a 4.53 guy, which is funny when you think that is slow in the NFL, but he has incredible acceleration. So he gets to that 4.53 really quick. He carries his weight really well. He has an incredible drive and passion. He had 24 touchdowns last year. So when he gets in the red zone, he has a nose for, to score. And again, he plays with great leadership, great passion. Clip that you're going to see here is a clip that is against Alabama. And you're going to see this is 13 personnel, and they're going to run a power play. And you're going to see everything that he does well. So you're going to see a jump cut right at the beginning, jump cut right there to the outside. He accelerates. He's really good in a small area, and he's very, very hard to tackle because of his strength. So, again, this is the overtime touchdown against Alabama. Again, he's quicker than he is fast. But he's not. All these guys, in my opinion, they can hit the home run, but these are chunk guys. And in the NFL, there are very few home run hitters at tailback, especially non-first round guys. You need guys that can get you a second, sixth, and chunk guys. And Corum's a guy that can do that. Really, really high in him, especially after the combine. His film matches the combine, and I think he'd be a great fit for Cleveland.
Yeah, the other thing is you kind of touched on it. He's the guy that when they got near the goal line, they gave him the football, and he answered. Another Big Ten guy. This is a guy that he's 20 years old. Braylon Allen, a little bit bigger. I think he's 6'1", 235 from Wisconsin. But again, 20 years old. What do you see with Allen?
Well, he's a monster guy. If you look at his film from 2 years ago, he would be a guy that you project as a first rounder in this draft. So he had 181 carries for 932 yards. He did have 12 touchdowns this year. Did not run the 40 at the combine, which is always skeptical to some. But me, I'm more of a film guy, and I think the film's more important than the combine. Some guys think differently, but I want to see the combine numbers and the pro day numbers match what you see on film. When you see Braylon Davis on film, he's a big, big kid. He's a He's all of 6'1", 235 pounds. Again, he's a workhorse kind of guy. Very solid pass catcher, very natural hands. He's a very good athlete. He's very light on his feet for being a guy that's so heavy. He runs violently. He finishes runs very well. The knock on him coming out is that he did not catch the ball very well, and I don't see that. I see him as a very natural pass catcher and a guy who improved. You can't improve the ability to catch sometimes, but you can get better at routes, and I think he catches the ball very well. He does not fight the football. I think he's a steal. I think he's one of my favorite guys at the running back position because of his potential. You worry about he runs a little bit high, but he's a guy who has great talent. If you look at this clip here, you're going to see him again. They're going to run a counter here. Wisconsin, again, very, very multiple, but you're going to see some of the jump cuts and light on his feet and ability to break tackles. And he constantly does this. Again, Wisconsin is a very multiple offense with counter and gap schemes, so he's going to have a very good understanding. He's been on a couple offensive coordinators now, both where he's huddled, a little bit more spread this year. But he's just a guy, very physical, big guy, light. I think he's going to be a steal, and I think he's going to be even a better pro than he was a college player.
Yeah, and I said he's 20 years old, so he's a youngin' without question. Another guy that we have heard who is young, Audric Estime, 5'11", 221 pounds from Notre Dame. Didn't run real fast. I think it was a 4.7 240, so that will likely cause him to slip a little bit in the draft.
Well, again, I tried to, the clip you're going to see is not yet, but the clip that, he shows a lot of explosion. So even though he didn't have that top end speed, and you're right, running a 4.71 immediately takes him off a lot of people's board. It does not take him off my board. I think he's outstanding. He had 209 carries for 1,300 yards this year, 18 touchdowns. His shuttle times, his ability, his 10-yard split. So this is not a guy, in my opinion, he's a heavy guy. He's 5'11", 220 pounds, but I think he'll even play heavier than that. He runs heavier than that. I think he's a guy that you think of in chunk plays. 10 to 20 yards is what he's going to give you. But he's going to give you constantly 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. And in the NFL, that's very important. He's very good on screens. He's very good. He catches the ball very good on checkdowns. He can run routes if necessary. For being heavy, he runs very light on his feet again. He's very patient, and then he has great bursts when he sees the hole. Short area explosion and his lateral quickness on his feet is very, very good. Again, that 4.71 is going to knock him down, which could be a benefit to the Browns. It could benefit these teams that need a really, really strong NFL runner. This is a NFL body. He's got long arms. He's got big hands, which tells you he can secure the ball. I like him a lot. And the clip that you're going to see here now is a clip of him breaking away. So, again, a power play, one-back power play, and this is against NC State. And you're going to see him explode away from people. And there's guys who have football speed and carry their pads well. SMA is one of those guys. So I don't care what he ran. He'll run better on his pro day, but he's a guy who has great vision, short area quickness, patience. I loved his ability to break away. I loved his ability in the red zone, and I loved his, he ran really, really well against really good teams. So, again, this counter play, you're going to see him pull away, breaking tackles, short area quickness, jump cuts. I really like Estime. Again, he'll move down because of the 40 time, but that'll get better on his pro day, and he's a guy who's going to be very successful at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's North Carolina State that he's pulling away from. So it's an ACC team, and he sure looks like he has some football speed there, pulling away from everybody. Again, he's just 20 years old like Allen. All right, this next guy that we're going to look at, Isaac Granado from Louisville, another guy, 6', 221. What do you see with him?
So Granado, as composed to Estime, he absolutely killed the combine. He may have the best combine of anybody there. He ran 4.3340, which was 98th percentile, 4.15 shuttle. He had a 41-inch vertical leap, 41.5 vertical leap, which puts him in the top 99%. He had 129 broad jump, which puts him in the 97th percent. He's a very fluid athlete. Again, went back, he was not high on thing, and then you see the combine. You go back and watch the film, and it matches up. He's sudden. He's not a guy who's going to shake a lot of people. He's a 1 foot in the ground. I think he's an outstanding zone runner. I think he'll get better at gap, but he can put his foot in the ground, and he gets vertical with that speed. He's also very heavy. He's 221 pounds. So his vertical burst after that first foot in the ground is outstanding, and he's hard to tackle because of that length. I think that other thing I like about him is he only had 231 career carries, both at Wisconsin and at Louisville. So that tells you there's not a lot of tread in those tires, which I really like. He does run high at times, which can get him hit. But here's a guy, again, catches the ball very well, had an outstanding combine. Like, I don't think anybody's better. And you're going to see here on this clip here what he does very well. So, again, he's going to put that foot in the ground, and he's vertical immediately. People bounce off him because of his lower leg strength. He's got great contact balance. Very well put together. Again, very strong. Did some really, really good things in the weight room at Louisville. I think he's a guy with a tremendous upside, a guy who made a ton of money in the combine. I think a guy that'll be around when the Browns pick. And if this is a guy that, if they're thinking running back, this guy is very, very good. Super impressive on film. A guy I wasn't super impressed with, then you go back and watch the film, and the numbers match the film. Really impressed with this guy.
All right, our last guy that we're going to take a look at, running back prospects, Carson Steele from UCLA. And when you mentioned this when we were talking before, Ball State. So that's where the name kind of clicked with me. The year before, he was at Ball State. Last year at UCLA. What do you see with Steele?
So that transition to the to the Pac-12 was very, very good. He had 845 yards last year. He had 1,500 yards the year before. This is a guy I love. He's a guy who doesn't have all the measurements. He plays. He's a berserker, right? So he gets the ball and he is running with his hair on fire all the time, and I love watching him. He's a hard runner. He's violent. At UCLA, he was one of those guys. He's first at practice, last to leave. He's 400-pound bench guy in the weight room, 615-pound squat, 7% body fat. He runs very compact. He runs very violently. He's a multi-scheme fit. He can fit in pass protection. He can fit in zone. He can fit in, gap schemes. Whatever you want to throw at him, he can do, and he does everything with a smile on his face. He's a special teamer possibility. He plays with his hair absolutely on fire. You're going to see in this clip we have, he makes a really good jump cut. And this is kind of what you're going to get. You're going to get a jump cut, and then you're going to get a vertical push, and you're going to get that really heavy run, always leaning forward, always getting you positive yards. So, again, he's a guy that a lot of people see as a free agent. I love this guy. And for what the Browns do physicality-wise with their run game, both in the gap and the zone schemes, this is a guy that fits. This is a guy that is super heavy. He's really hard not to like when you see him on film. He catches the ball very well. He's a natural ball catcher, a guy I really like, and a guy who I think has a long career on Sundays.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff as we take a look at different positional groups for NFL draft possibilities coming up for the Browns. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
We're going to take a quick time out on Sports4CLE. Other side of the break, Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus with some players he thinks make sense for the Browns in the upcoming draft. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We refer to it as roster building season in the NFL. We turn our attention to the draft. Coming up, not too long now, under a couple of months. Let's welcome in Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. Trevor, combine a couple weeks ago, free agency underway. Never too early to start talking about the NFL draft. A couple of areas that are of interest to Browns fans. Wide receivers. The high-end talent is really good this year. Do you think as you get into that second round and even the back end of the second round, there still might be guys that can contribute pretty significantly early on in their NFL careers?
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Unfortunately, I know Browns fans are maybe they feel like they're missing out on the hype, not having a first-round pick this year, not picking until 54, and it does stink that you can't get in the first-round action, but they're going to have a really good player available for them, especially if they are honing in on that wide receiver spot. There's a couple of names that I think would be really good for them specifically. One of them is UNC wide receiver Tez Walker, and the other one is in Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson. Now, why did I pick these two dudes? Speed. Both of them under 4.4 speed type of players. And, Amari Cooper, he's kind of that do-it-all receiver. You got a powerful on-the-line of scrimmage guy in Cedric Tillman. I think Elijah Moore can still do a lot of really great work from the slot as well, but you need that vertical stretch player, and it feels like they've tried to fill that over the last couple of years. You just haven't found the right guy to do it. So I feel like this class is perfect for them to line up with that. Both of those guys, I think, bring that vertical speed element to the game. We saw it at UNC. We saw it at Michigan. Both these guys, I think, would make really good fits for the Cleveland Browns in what they're looking to do to complete their passing arsenal talent level.
So let's take a look at them individually. Tez Walker, you mentioned, this year played at North Carolina, and you mentioned here's the 40. 4.36 is what he clocks in at. 6'1", 193, so decent size. Local guys will remember first team American Conference performer a couple of years ago at Kent State locally. This year he was third team All ACC. And he really had to kind of appeal a couple of times to get an additional year from the NCAA. Otherwise, those numbers would be significantly higher. Alec Pierce is a comp that they like to compare him to. And as you mentioned, all-day vertical target, long, linear frame, impressive build, and he has the speed to win foot races. The other thing that you find out with him, he stepped up and kind of continued to play well. Booming build-up speed, he eats up that cushion, separates vertically. Look at the career average. It's over 31 yards on touchdown receptions. Yeah. Ability to stack coverage, save on catches. Let's look at some of the weaknesses, some of the things that the scouting say now route runner, dull cuts, that's something you can do. Disjointed, sloppy footwork. Again, those are all things that are correctable. The inconsistent tracking and adjusting deep balls would be a concern, but when you look at the strengths, above 30 yards on touchdown receptions, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the type of vertical threat that this guy is. And when I go through scouting, I like to watch multiple years of players because year in and year out, things can change, things can get better. Sometimes they can get worse. So I went back and I watched his Kent State film as well. And, he went up against the likes of Oklahoma, Washington, Georgia. And there were times when he looked like one of the best players on the field in those really talented conferences. And then he obviously moves over to UNC. Like you said, it took a little bit of time for him to get on the field. He was appealing his eligibility case with the NCAA, ends up getting on the field, but it's about mid-season, and just the chemistry just wasn't there the way that you thought that it could have been with him and Drake May. And so even with a really talented quarterback passing the football, the production wasn't as good as it could have been. But you mentioned, look, 30-yard average when it comes to those touchdown passes, and just shows you the type of deep threat that this guy is. The comp of Alec Pierce definitely makes sense because he is that vertical stretch type of a player, but I think he's got a higher ceiling than Alec Pierce did. There are definitely things that he needs to clean up, and we saw it specifically at the Senior Bowl. He's just got to get stronger and more consistent at the catch point. The two jobs of a wide receiver: get open, catch the football. And he can get open, but catching the football, sometimes it just eludes it for whatever reason. And that's something that you got to spend a lot of time doing. You got to eliminate those concentration drops and be a little bit more sure-handed. But if he is, we're talking about a guy that every corner, every safety, every defensive coordinator has to account for when he is on the field. And that specifically, again, is what I think the Browns have been missing in their passing attack, is that type of player. Put a true threat on the back end of the defense every time you hit the field. And I think Tez Walker has the speed and the vertical ability to do that.
The other guy that you mentioned, Roman Wilson from Michigan, and you see people knew he was going to do well at the Combine. 4.39 40-yard dash time, second team All Big Ten. 5'11", 185. Marvin Mims Jr. Is the comp. Smooth strider, alarming speed once he touches top gear. Wilson primarily focused on attacking intermediate and deep portions of the field, explosive element to the Wolverines' ground and pound approach. Right there, electric athletic tester. Again, explosive speed is the strength, acceleration, much more sure-handed and a natural pass catcher this year than he was before. Defenders struggled to play with him. Good post-catch acceleration on those underneath West Coast routes. Competitive, focused when he catches the ball and it becomes contested. Weaknesses, inconsistent elusiveness to avoid route redirection at press or in space. Routes lack consistency, leverage, and salesmanship. Sources tell us, I don't think most people realize what he would have done in a wide-open offense like Ohio State or Washington. He's got rare speed, and you will see it in the NFL when he's a bigger part of the passing game. That's from an NFL national scout. And the point he's getting to there is Michigan didn't throw the ball except in obvious passing situations because they didn't have to.
No, it's true. They didn't. I mean, national champions for a reason. They won up front, and they won with the ground and pound. And, you know, it's funny. We talk about the same things when it comes to J.J. McCarthy's scouting report is he just didn't pass the ball a ton. But like you said, they didn't need to. But I agree with that scouting quote where if you would have put Roman Wilson on different types of offenses, like he mentions, more wide open offenses, more pass-centric offenses in college football, this guy's a production machine. I mean, he's a monster. When it comes to that vertical passing attack, that's where his bread and butter is. He's got that track speed. His mother ran track as well, so he's got that track DNA to him. And what I love the most about Roman Wilson and why I think he's a good fit for Cleveland specifically is Michigan has this saying with their wide receivers: no block, no rock. Meaning if you do not block well, if you are not giving it your all in the blocking game, you're not going to get on the field and you're not going to get the football thrown to you. So Roman Wilson is a testament to that because he's a little bit smaller of a player, but he blocks his butt off. And he's going to be somebody who's going to give you every single ounce of who he is as a football player. And that's something that when you look at Cleveland, you're hoping that rushing attack is back and fully healthy next year, especially with Nick Chubb leading it. And you know that you're going to have your wide receivers on the field to be able to block. Well, in my head, I'm thinking of situations where Cedric Tillman's on the field, Roman Wilson's on the field, and you're not worried at all about your wide receivers holding up in the blocking game in obvious rushing situations. And so to me, not only the vertical ability of Roman Wilson that checks those boxes, but I think that added strength, that pound for pound strength for him is something that's also very, very alluring to me and why I think that he could be an excellent pick for them. I'm not so sure he even gets to where the Browns are picking, but if he does, he'd be a great choice for him.
All right, let's talk a little bit about running backs before we take a quick time out. There's some really good ones available in free agency, as you would expect. What about this year's draft class? Nobody's going to get drafted really high because running backs just don't get drafted really high. What about the talent level, though, of the running back core?
No, I think the running back room is nice when it comes to this draft class. I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day where they said, hey, just because there's not a Bijan Robinson or a Saquon Barkley in this class, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be future contributors from the running back position. And so, with Cleveland not having a first-round pick and, with them not picking until the middle part of the second round, I don't expect them to take a running back there either with their first selection. And so when you think of running back targets for this team, it's a little bit later in the draft, the mid-rounds, maybe sometime early on day 3. Two guys that stand out for me: Notre Dame running back Audric Estime, who gives you that size profile that seems like Cleveland really loves for their running backs. And then the same with Isaac Guerendo, the running back from Louisville, who Didn't even lead his team in carries this past year, but holy cow, did he put on a show in Indianapolis. Both of those guys have that added plus size with some good explosiveness too.
All right, let's take a look at Estime again, a younger guy. I believe he's just 20 years old. 5'11", 221. He may slide a little bit. This is his 40, and it was not great. 4.71 was the official time. Jamal Williams, if you're telling me you can get Jamal Williams in the third, fourth round, that's pretty good. Thickly muscled runner capable of wearing out defenses through a heavier workload. There were times when Estime played too slow when he forced the process, moving pieces up front, but he showed a greater willingness to cut it loose as the season progressed. The other thing I would say about him is he's got football speed, and we can talk about that in a little bit. Can make sudden reactive cuts, closing tackle, agile feet to hop over, sidestep traffic. Knack for finding late developing lanes. Once he picks up momentum, tackling is like tackling a compact car. You do like that. Weaknesses can get bogged down. Processing interior blocking, sluggish to gather feet, sink hips. Average burst allows defender opportunity to take their shots. Running style forces him to work harder. Potential to protect the quarterback, meaning in blocking, but he needs technique work. So that last thing tells you he can get on the field early. I saw enough Notre Dame games where I saw him running away from defenses. That's what I kind of meant by football speed.
Yeah, no, look, I'm with you. The 40-yard dash, I thought he was going to run faster than that. And honestly, I've seen him run faster than that. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm not. As I went through this process, Estime is somebody that I consistently came back to is like, man, there's just something about this dude. I like him. I know he's not going to be the most explosive guy in the world. He's not going to be a home run hitter for you. But honestly, I think that home run speed is kind of overblown in today's NFL. Like, people love the guys, the running backs who are going to run, in the 4.4, sometimes the 4.3s. We're about to talk about one in a second. But I would much rather have a player who's giving me a healthy 4 or 5 yards per carry consistently than to say, hey, this guy's really boom or bust. Maybe he'll take a 60-yarder to the house, but outside of that, he probably isn't doing too much for you. Give me the steady approach to the running game, especially when it comes to that RB2, that RB3 label. And Estime is somebody who, like the scouting report said, he's got the frame, he's got the strength to be a nice third down back, to bring in, have him as a pass protecting specialist. And then, of course, you get him in those short yardage situations on third down as well. So, yeah, I think the 40 is going to freak some people out, but Estime's game and how it's going to translate to the next level, that didn't really matter anyway. So I like him for what he is. He's a determined runner. He's got some really nice burst to him. When he sees the field really well, he's got some beautiful runs, like you said, from watching a lot of Notre Dame games. So Estime, don't be too alarmed by the 40. This guy can give you some really nice value as a mid-round running back pick.
And the other guy you mentioned, different running back, Isaac Guerendo, running back from Louisville, and you see 4.33 40-yard dash. This is a guy that's 6 foot 221, so to be able to move like that is pretty good. Carries the same amount of weight as Estime at 221. Stephen Ridley is the comp for him. Was at Wisconsin, moved to Louisville, ascending running back prospect, finally able to get enough carries to show what he's capable of doing. Built like the prototypical Badger, so Wisconsin runner, thick, well-proportioned frame, much more decisive runner than he was in his previous season. Cut and burst is fairly average. When we look at his strengths, impressive blend of size, agility, toughness, ran with improved decisiveness, good lateral shifts, drops his pad, plows through early arm tackles. Defensive backs don't seem to bring him down on outside runs. That's great. Can be an effective pass catcher. Things that he needs to work on. So the weaknesses, below average explosiveness out of the gate. Cuts are more rounded than sudden. Will have to guard against bouncing it out too far. Sources, here's what they say about him. Track guy in high school, you don't always see that speed in his play. You see people's pads rattle when he gets into them, though. So indicative of a guy that is a football player is what they're saying. When he hits you, you feel him. That's an intriguing prospect. And you mentioned he didn't even lead Louisville in carries.
Right, right. And that's kind of, I think, the confusing part for some people. They look at production and they say, where was the production for this guy over the course of his college career? But, you look at his athleticism, you look at what he was able to do at the Shrine Bowl as well. He was a standout in practice, somebody that I noticed very, very quickly. And it just felt like he was a different kind of cat. He was a different type of athlete. He's got those tree trunk legs, which make him hard to bring down and clearly show off that explosiveness that we saw at the combine, with not just the 40-yard dash, but the vertical jump, the broad jump as well. Really high scores in both of those. And so this is just a powerful runner. And I like the last part of that scouting report where it says, hey, he's got soft hands as well. He can square up against incoming blitzers. And again, going back to what I said about Estime, that's how you get on the field early. Like for the Browns specifically, the reason why I like both these guys is because not only do they carry a little bit more size to them, which seems to be an identity of the Cleveland Browns backfield, but you got Nick Chubb as the assumed RB1 on this team, right? You've got some guys in the backfield who you trust already. These players can almost be like farm system guys, like, what they talk about in baseball, where you got them in the farm system, you're bringing them along, and maybe there's not a starting role for them right away, but it certainly is within the cards for them to develop and really get into a contributing role year 2, year 3 of that rookie contract. So Garendo is one of those dudes who you just bet on the size, speed, explosiveness combination. And like that scouting report said, he got better in 2023. You're hoping that continues as things move forward.
Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus and I can step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the bank, we'll flip sides of the ball. Talk a little bit about a couple of defensive players that the Browns may be looking at. Also some sleepers. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking NFL draft with Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. We're going to shift our attention to the defensive side of things. Defensive line is an area the Browns probably looking at. Trevor, Braden Fisk was a guy that early on the process, some guys had mocked to the Browns. He kind of went off at the combine. Do you think he kind of moved out of the range of where the Browns will be? I mean, he looked like a linebacker in a 292-pound frame. But do you think he moved up the draft board pretty significantly?
Yeah, I was going to say, him playing well, that's putting it lightly, or him performing well at the combine, that's putting it lightly. I mean, he was #1 for defensive tackles in the vertical jump and the broad jump and the 40-yard dash. I mean, he just showed that he was an absolute mover out there, which is good because that's what his tape says, right? When you watch Braden Fisk, he's a little bit undersized, and he's not quite that 300-pound defensive lineman. But what he does for you is he's a good one-gap penetrator. He's somebody who's going to immediately get into the backfield, in through his gap, and he's going to get into the quarterback or the running back, and he did that a ton at Western Michigan and then also at Florida State this past year. So he is somebody who it feels as though 54, to expect him to be there, that'd be a stretch at this point. I think that he's probably going to be an early second-round pick. I don't think he's going to creep his way into the first round just because that weight. It's not for every team, and I don't know how many teams out there think that he could be a total 3-down interior defensive lineman. But certainly for a specialized role, for a team that already has a big-bodied player, maybe to play nose tackle, to take up some blocks, if you get Braden Fisk one-on-one, he's got the quickness to get in the backfield to really generate those pressures. So he is somebody who has been a fast riser throughout the draft process, and there's no doubt about it. He's on the up. So there's a couple of guys that you think fit the Browns relative to the defensive line. One of them, Chris Jenkins. So let's take a look. Jenkins, 6'3", 292, second-team All-American, second-team All-Big Ten in 2023. You see just over 5 seconds in the 40, 5:02 for a guy that's almost 300 pounds. That is not bad, and that is Chris Jenkins with his dad, Chris Jenkins Sr., who was an NFL player with the Panthers. So we put that in there because I absolutely loved him wearing his dad's
his dad's jersey. Here's the scouting profile for him. Milton Williams is the NFL comp. You see rare pedigree, college football national title under his belt. Dad, 4-time Pro Bowler. Smaller frame for his position, plays good strength, one-on-one power, can neutralize single blocks, frequently running down ball carriers, chasing quarterbacks at the end of the play. When you look at the strengths and weaknesses, again, the bloodlines obviously, excelled playoff matchups against Alabama and Washington, so he played well against good competition, consistently first in with hands, playing blocks before the blocks play him. Hustle, quickness, close to the running lane. All the things you would expect from a guy who grew up with an NFL father. Those are what those are telling you. Legitimate spin counter to bolster his rush plan as pro. Some weaknesses, some things they got to work on. Missing the ideal frame, nothing you can do about that. Not nearly enough to anchor and withstand pro double teams regularly. Inconsistent contact balance, lateral block engagement. Hand pop is average. Struggle to create adequate pocket push as a bull rusher, which again, Trevor, you expect that when you're saying a guy is undersized, you don't expect him to bull rush.
Yeah, but I think pound for pound, he is pretty strong, and I love Lance. Lance is the scouting report, the author of the scouting reports that you're reading, and so I respect Lance's scouting a lot. But I think I'm a little bit higher on Chris Jenkins Jr. than it seems like he is. Yeah, I think that I respect Chris Jenkins Jr.'s strength a little bit more than he does. Yeah, I think that he is a little bit lighter, not nearly as tall, not nearly as big as his dad was, but man, I think he's powerful. I mean, I saw him go up against double teams in college and was able to handle himself very, very well. And not that you want him consistently going up against double teams at the next level, because at the NFL, man, it's just a ton of strength going on in the trenches. But I think he can hold up really well. Understands technique, understands how to utilize a screwdriver technique as well, where he can really hold his own and hold the line of scrimmage. So really the big weakness for Chris Jenkins is he just doesn't have much of a pass rush profile. Like, he is that anchor interior run defender, and that's why I like him for Cleveland, because for so long it felt like they just didn't have that in the middle, and now they got themselves Tomlinson, and I think that pairing him with the guys that they now have inside really allows him to kind of fortify that middle of the defense, really occupy a lot of space, take up those blocks, free up all the edge rushers that they have, free up Myles Garrett, of course, is the name of the game for Cleveland. But even though he is not as good of a pass rusher as some of these other defensive tackles in this class, I just think pound for pound, the strength would be so key to what they need on the interior going into this season.
All right, another guy that you think kind of fits the Browns, Tyler Davis, defensive tackle from Clemson, 6'2", 301. He is a 3-time first-team All-ACC performer. Similar speed, exactly the exact speed, actually, 5:02 in the 40. When you look at it, Akeem Spence is the comp by Lance Zerlin. Fireplug nose tackle, compact frame, plays much stronger than his measurables might indicate. Lacks the pure mass teams covet along the interior. Uses terrific strength and leverage to bow his neck and take on all comers, usually first off the snap. Physical limitations will make him less attractive than earlier in the draft. Motor and consistency, pressuring blockers could push him into snaps as a 4-3 nose. Strengths, times up snap, slams into blockers, quick, powerful punch, mirrors lineman's lateral movement, proportional strength for impressive double team battles. Leg drive creates relentless pressure, plays natural leverage. Foot quickness gives him a chance to find entry points into the pocket. Some weaknesses, some things he's going to have to work on. Below average mass, again, we've talked about that. Short arms make it tougher to control blockers. Loses pad level when engaging lateral blocks. Below average hand fighting, slip pass protection. Needs to develop more pass rush counter moves and put them in his bag. Again, a lot of those bottom line things are things that they're going to drill and he will work on repeatedly with Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, I don't think that I think of Tyler Davis, and when I thought of the connection with Cleveland, I wasn't necessarily thinking that second-round pick, but they've got a couple of fifth-round picks. They got a couple of sixth-round picks. If he makes it there, I do like his fit for a lot of the same reasons why I like Chris Jenkins Jr. He's just, like that scouting report said, a powerful dude in the middle. Doesn't have the ideal measurables when it comes to the length, and that'll probably affect how much of a pass rusher he'll really become at the next level. But super experienced. I mean, he's been playing for Clemson, starting on Clemson's defensive line for a long time now. They've trusted him in the middle. He plays that 3 technique defensive tackle. He can play nose tackle for you. And I just think he's a really valuable, versatile, rotational guy. And again, the measurables and the lack of pass rush plan, pass rush ability, that's the reason why he's not going to get picked earlier. But those high floor players, the guys that you really want to round out your depth chart, be in that rotation on the interior of your defensive line, if you got Tyler Davis as DT3 for you and you're kind of rotating guys in and out, I think that's going to be a really dang good defensive line. So a lot of the same reasons why I like Chris Jenkins here, fortifying the health and the strength of the interior defensive line for that Cleveland defense.
All right, before I let you go, you gave us a couple of guys that you think might be sleepers in this draft. The Browns have been pretty good at finding guys later in the drafts, especially lately with Andrew Berry. And you gave us Solomon Byrd, edge rusher from USC, 6'3", 255. And you see fairly productive, both Wyoming and USC. Fails to stand out physically or athletically on tape, plays with solid aggression, strength, finds himself entangled with blockers more often than he should. And again, when you're talking about guys later in drafts, these are pretty standard things that you're going to hear about. I mean, if they had the production on tape and the measurables, they'd be up higher. What do you like about Byrd?
So I liked him because I was watching him during Shrine Bowl practices, and one, I love the motor. I felt like he was going all out at all times, and so I really liked that about him. But two, when he was at the Shrine Bowl, there were a couple of reps where he was trying a nice move. Like there was an inside spin move specifically where he tried something and it worked. He was able to do it, but the coach actually kind of like brought him aside. He's like, hey, here's how you can make that win even cleaner. He gets right back on the line of scrimmage, immediately wants to show it and does, hits the move exactly the way that he needs to. And just, I felt like I saw that a couple of times with him where it was something that he almost tried, was like being a perfectionist with his craft. And like you said, if this guy was more productive, then if he was more like a top tier talent, we wouldn't be talking about him as a late round gem. But somebody who's not afraid to continue to do what he needs to do, to have the reps, to get better, to hone in on his craft, like that's the kind of player that you want to bet on. That's the kind of player that you say, all right, let me take a flyer on this guy somewhere on day 3 and see what he develops into. He's got that want to, he's got that work ethic, and I think that he does. He's got some physical limitations in terms of overall athleticism, but I do feel like he's aware of that, and he's trying to get more pass rush moves in there, and so that's something that really drew me to Solomon Byrd as a day 3 guy to take a flyer on.
All right, and the other guy is a cornerback, Kamel Haddon, from Tennessee, 6'1", 196. Big cover corner with athletic talent and skill set to employ in a variety of coverages. Had the feet and strength to redirect routes from press, but can be a little tight in the transition when trying to simply mirror and match and release. Cornerback is a position the Browns have been, especially under Berry, they've been really good at identifying traits and corners and getting them in and getting them productive. So what did you like about Haddon?
Yeah, look, Cleveland Browns, let's be clear, have maybe the best trio of corners in the NFL. And so it's not like you're saying, hey, I need this guy to start right away. But the reason why I like him as a late round gem for Cleveland is with this position, you always want to have guys in the bullpen, in the farm system that you're developing that could potentially be starters for you one day, whether because of injury, whether contract situations come up and they lose them in free agency, whatever it is. Haddon is somebody who has been on a long college football journey in a couple of different programs, gets to Tennessee, struggles early on, but man, this past year, he had an elite coverage grade before he ended up getting hurt midway through the season. So he was playing some really good football, had a couple of pick sixes as well. So, I mean, he was somebody who you finally, it felt like you saw the light turn on with a lot of that height, that length, that athletic ability, that combination of those things really started to show up this past year. So small sample size of him playing well. That's why he's going to get drafted on day 3 somewhere. But for the Browns, like you mentioned, really good at identifying talent, really good at kind of developing these guys, finding these guys somewhere on day 3. I think that Haddon could be somebody that they could have their eye on to say, yeah, we like that small sample size. Let's see what it can become if we get him in our system. So that's why I like him for Cleveland.
Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Trevor.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
All right, Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. Always really good stuff, not only relative to the NFL draft, but also relative to free agency. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.